So if I put hashtag EduSky in my post, I'm like, this is a post about education, and I would like educators to see it. So especially if you're new on the platform and you don't have a lot of followers, this is a way to connect with people who want to talk about the same topic.
Hello there, and welcome to today's episode of the Easy EdTech podcast. My name is Monica Burns, and I am so glad that you're here to join me today. If you want to make the most of education technology, aka EdTech, well, you are in the right place. My goal has always been to help make EdTech easier and give you ideas you can try yourself, share with a colleague, or bookmark for later in the school year. Every Tuesday here on the Easy EdTech podcast, you'll hear stories from my time in the classroom, the work I do now with schools and districts, and my travels to different EdTech events. Get ready for solo episodes where I share some quick tips and stories, and interviews full of practical ideas and stories from new guests each month. If we mention something you'd like to check out, make sure to click the link. You'll find it in the episode description or the summary area where you're listening to this podcast, or you can find every episode and all of the resources we mention by going to classtechtips.com/podcast, or by going to classtechtips.com and just clicking on the Easy EdTech podcast button at the top of the page. This episode is sponsored by the free stuff page on my website, classtechtips.com. This is where you'll find free weekly planner pages, graphic organizers, ebooks, and more. Just head to classtechtips.com and press the free stuff button at the top of the page to find lots of free downloads for you and your colleagues. That's classtechtips.com and press the free stuff button at the top of the page. This week's episode is titled What Educators Should Know About Bluesky with Alice Keeler. I have known Alice for almost a decade through our work in EdTech spaces, and she is super active on Bluesky. This is a new-ish platform that's gained a lot of traction with educators over the fall. And once I saw the energy on Bluesky start to increase over the past several weeks, I reached out to Alice to see if she would join the podcast today to talk about her experiences, her observations, and of course, some of her tips on how to make the most of Bluesky. Let's jump into the conversation. Welcome to the podcast, Alice. I am just so excited to chat with you about all things Bluesky today. But before we jump in, can you just share a bit with listeners about your role in education? What does your day-to-day look like?
Oh, that is such a complicated question, actually. I've been a teacher for 25 years, and so we're just going to shorten this up that in addition to my passion for student-centered classrooms, I also just have a passion for supporting teachers. So a lot of what I do is blog, write books, put out social media where I'm hopefully putting out helpful tips, and then I go do conferences and teacher trainings. And then also as a Google developer expert, I code, but I'm coding things that are hopefully helpful to teachers. Like that's my mindset. And I do some things with Google to promote the coding community.
Well, it's always so fun following your work and your travels. And we've known each other for a long time now in this EdTech space. And you were really the first person, I guess it was last year, who brought up Bluesky, right, as a way to continue some of the connections that all of us really appreciated having on Twitter, for more than a decade. So can you share a little bit about your journey from being a big fan of Twitter to becoming an advocate for Bluesky? What inspired you to make the shift?
Well, I can't verify this statistic, but I heard back in the day that teachers were the number one users of Twitter. And you would just get on, you wouldn't even have to scroll, right? You would just see people sharing things they do in their classroom, and you get a tip and you feel like energized, like I want to do this tomorrow. And I would just put out, I used to when I would do Google Docs training, and this was back in the day when you had two people in the same Google Doc and the room would gasp, and I would put out a link on Twitter hey, jump in this Google Doc for me so I can demonstrate to the room.
Yeah.
The teachers I'm working with, and like tons of people would join the Google Doc. And we had this great community, Twitter chats. I literally had 2 Twitter accounts because I would land in Twitter jail. So, if you would tweet too many times in an hour, it would lock your account down. And if I was moderating, I'm not only putting out the questions, but then I'm like trying to reply to everybody. And I would end up in Twitter jail. So I had a backup account. And so those conversations were so energizing. We all enjoyed this. And then somewhere along the line, and it's hard to pinpoint what, how, and why. I have some theories, but who really knows? That community decreased. And so now when I put out a link like, hey, I'm trying to demonstrate something, I get a lot less people engaging on that when I do it on Twitter. Even though I have 196,000 followers on Twitter. But as many of us have experienced, there's been a giant X. So I'm down about 3,000 followers, and I'm thrilled about it. I'm like, there's better conversations happening over on Bluesky. If you know Twitter, you know Bluesky. I mean, the interface looks exactly the same. It operates in much of the same way. In fact, I have still my Twitter tab open, and I have the Bluesky tab open, and sometimes I'm confused which platform I'm on. If you understand Twitter, you understand Bluesky. But when Elon Musk came in and really destroyed the community, there was already a decrease. And that's what Twitter really is for us, right? Is a way to do those quick connections. It's not a blog post where it's one-sided. It's those back and forth interactions and conversations that you don't get as much on other platforms. So it's a really important style of social media for educators, especially since we're short on time, and especially since this job can be really isolating. And so, when he fired a bunch of people and took down some of the meager protections that you have to block and some of these things, educators are just like, you know what? Peace out. And some of them went other places, right? They went to Mastodon, they went to Threads, and some of these other places, and some just left. They're like, I'm done.
Yeah.
So I reached out to Bluesky, and I said, because that's my primary place that I interact with teachers was Twitter. And I'm like, it's just not the same anymore. Teachers used to be the number one group using it. Like, let's bring them back. Let's build the educator community. Now, at the time, you had to have an invite. Now, getting one invite every other week doesn't build community very quickly. Yeah. So I asked them, like, just give me a bunch, and I'm going to really work intentionally on building the EduSky community. So I am using the hashtag EduSky, and for accessibility purposes, we are using camel case, right? So capital E and capital S, and the others are lowercase. And I have been plugging away for 2 years. I could really only post on Bluesky once or twice a day. And I really couldn't exit, I'm emphasizing that with an X, I really couldn't exit Twitter because there wasn't enough people over on Bluesky to still continue those conversations and connections, right? So fast forward at the election, everybody's exiting. So journalists are leaving. Companies are, I'm seeing just companies like, I'm done. I'm done with the hate messages. I'm done with the lack of moderation. I'm done with the algorithms manipulating what I see. And they came over to Bluesky. Now, I'm going to tell you, since the election, I have made an unofficial job that is unpaid of just doing Bluesky all day. So it's like I'm spending 16 hours a day. I actually right now can tone it down. But right when there was this huge flood all at once, I want to make sure people feel seen, right? So I'm liking posts, I'm commenting, I'm encouraging others. Like, here's tips on how to use the platform. And I just pumping out tips all day long because there's a site that you can go to that shows you how many users are signing up to Bluesky. It's like a slot machine. It feels exciting. Like, whoa, we're almost at 20 million. So pre-election, it was 14 million. And I think right now they're just at about 24 million. I don't have the tab open. I usually do.
It's been just wild over the past. I mean, we're recording this the first week of December. This episode will go live really soon. And in the past, 3 or 4 weeks, even with the Thanksgiving holiday right in the middle of it, it's just been wild to see all of the energy there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I read the Bluesky hashtag, and even on Twitter, like I'm scrolling and I'm struggling to find people who aren't just self-promoting.
Yeah.
I'm struggling. Where's the teachers sharing what they're doing in their classroom? That's what I want to see. I love seeing I have some robots, or my students made this for the walls. That's what I come to social media for. And that's bad. Like I'm scrolling and it's just people sharing and being open. And the key here with Bluesky is it is open source. That it is not it is for profit, but they are the type of corporation that is a public good. So they don't have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders. They have a fiduciary responsibility to the community.
Yeah.
It is under blockchain. It's a lot of things that I don't really understand, but it kind of boils down to they can't sell it to a billionaire. So you can't have one guy with a lot of money deciding, well, if you have links in your post, I'm suppressing it. So, and even better, you can create your own algorithms, which is really the power of Bluesky. When you first show up, you have an algorithm that says discover, and you need that, right? Because you can't show up and see nothing, and you're not even sure what to do or where to go. So I get it. There's the discover feed. A feed is what you see. So when you log into Twitter, when you log into Facebook, your feed is what you're seeing. On none of these platforms owned by billionaires do you really have control over what your feed really is. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I go onto Facebook, it is literally 20 in a row of things not my friends, 20 in a row, 20.
Yeah. There's a lot of suggested content right on these platforms, a lot of sponsored content on these platforms. It's just a really different experience. And, I was listening to a podcast. I posted it on the link on Bluesky and heard from some other educators who were, also follow that podcast or who were just, curious about the topic right there. A great example of just engagement, feeling very Twitter-ish, right? And so in this episode, I'll link to it in the show notes. It was with Kara Swisher talking to some tech journalists and some people, who are unpacking what Bluesky, happens behind the scenes with it being more decentralized, the mission being more like, I can access my email from anywhere, right? I don't need, if I want to access social networks, like how is this really tied back to me? Like just exploring some of these different pieces that I think, are maybe things we didn't think about front of mind, right? Interacting with a space like Twitter or Facebook or Instagram in the past, but now we have a little more context, a little more vocabulary to ask these questions. So, for educators who are new to Bluesky, are there any tips you would give them for setting things up, like maybe making a professional profile or something that connects back to their educator goals?
Well, the first thing is picture and a bio. Make sure your bio says you're an educator. So I try to daily go through who's followed me, and I'm going through. I mean, some people are like crypto bro. I'm like, I'm not following you. And then if you don't have a bio, like, well, are you a third grade teacher or are you a crypto bro? Like, I need to know before I follow back. So the very first thing you need to do, photo, and I don't care if it's a picture of your cat.
Right.
Just don't look like a bot. But take a picture of the rug on your floor, your coffee cup. It doesn't have to be your face, right? And then in your bio, just put teacher, put educator, put K-12, put something that attracts people to you that they realize that they want to have those conversations with you. And then a hashtag is a topic. One of the things I like about Bluesky over Twitter, which I am not calling it X, that is just not happening.
I can't, I like have a mental block with it. Anyhow, right. Yeah.
It's just proof that he killed Twitter. Twitter doesn't exist anymore. This X thing is a shell of what it formerly was. He butchered it. So you want to make sure that you label your posts. I still want to call them tweets.
Right.
You want to label your posts with a hashtag that other people could see what it is about, because you can create a custom feed, a custom view, just to view those hashtags. So if you click, and they're clickable, right? So if I put hashtag EduSky in my post, I'm like, this is a post about education, and I would like educators to see it. So especially if you're new on the platform and you don't have a lot of followers, this is a way to connect with people who want to talk about the same topic. And EduSky is going to be from preschool through college.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of like just think about your audience. Is this really for preschool through college? That I'm just kind of speaking to the educator audience in general versus hashtag I teach math, right? You're posting math content. There's a bunch of hashtags out there. So what you can do then is you click on it and you can see what other people are posting in there. Like, comment. That's how we build engagement.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when people come and no one responds to their post, they're not going to come back.
Yeah.
So I try to make sure I'm watching that hashtag, but I don't just watch the hashtag. I've created a feed. And so what's unique about Bluesky is we can all do that. You can go to skyfeed.app, I think. Just Google search it. How do I make a custom feed on Bluesky? And there's some different platforms to do that. And you can set your rules. So somebody shared a feed today of quiet followers. So it's people I follow, but they don't post very often. So it's filtered. The feed is filtered for people who need some engagement because they don't come on very often.
Right.
I'm like, oh,
I love that.
Yeah. So like I'm following all of these educators who kind of signed up and they're not really sure if they want to be in the space. And again, if we don't engage with them, they're not going to come back. So I've got that feed pinned. So at the top, I have all of these feeds. I have the EduSky feed. So I'm following not just the hashtag, but I actually have it slightly filtered for conversations.
Okay.
So, but you don't have to follow my feed. If you want to see EduSky or whatever hashtag in a certain way that prioritizes things that are important to you, just make your own. But I do have mine. So it's trying to encourage conversations that it filters out some of the things that are not. And it's nothing personal.
Yeah. No, I love that as a setup.
You can pin that feed. You can make your own feed, follow someone else's feed. We have the Twitter chats are back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm calling them EDU chats, but it's a Twitter chat.
Right.
And the EduSky chat. So it's hashtag EDU, capital E, capital S, Sky, capital C, chat. We're doing on Mondays, and we're going to move it to Tuesdays because there's like a ton of chats on Monday nights. So we're just going to push out of the space. But the conversations have been rocking. The first one we had 900 posts in 30 minutes. You know, when's the last time you did a Twitter chat with that much engagement?
No, right? It's been a long time. And I think about, how Twitter was such a huge way for me to learn, to gather ideas, to connect with people, that I didn't get to meet face to face until a conference, right? Or somewhere, where we, had some in real life time together. And I was just at an event right before Thanksgiving, a conference where I, went to Twitter like I usually do to see what people were talking about. And again, kind of crickets like it's been for the past few years, especially at smaller conferences. But on Bluesky, people were snapping pictures of where they were in the expo hall, of what they were learning in a session. And, it was just wild to see. So, are there strategies you'd recommend for educators who want to, grow their network and reach? You mentioned the hashtags, you mentioned some chats. I've seen starter packs pop up on my feed.
So if you do know Twitter, you don't know starter packs.
Right. So that would be helpful, I think, for people to wrap their head around if they're trying to grow their network.
It is a recommended list of people to follow. Now, whenever you sign someone up for Twitter in the past, what's the first thing you do? You take their phone, you're like, follow Monica, follow Dave Burgess, follow John Carippo, follow Victoria the Tech, follow Ken Shelton. I'm going to stop now, and I'm not going to try to offend anybody who posts great content. I'm not mentioning you, but you'd have to help them get started with who to follow. And so that is a problem that Bluesky has solved with starter packs. Yeah. So what I can do is I just go to my profile, I click on starter packs, and it says create a starter pack. And it's literally like you just search. So I just type in Monica and I check a checkbox. And, and I type in Hedrick and I check a checkbox. And then it can do up to 150 recommendations. Now, let me recommend that if you don't know the person who made the starter pack, don't do it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's just because there's a follow all and you're now following 150 people, which is awesome. Right. And I've been curating this spreadsheet. This is what's taking me 16 hours a day. I have a tab where I'm like people that I know are educators. So I'm just trying to do some trust verification, at least at a small level. This person's an educator. They have a starter pack and I'm adding it to a list, and that list randomizes once a day. Okay. So you can just go in and click here's the physics teachers, here's the science teachers, here's the librarians. Click follow all, and now you have a bunch of people that you can really quickly interact with. So that's something that's super cool.
Yeah. And you started that like right at the beginning of all of this. I feel like when you were jumping
Spreadsheet, not
into
the starter pack.
the spreadsheet, I should say. Yeah. Just making sure people knew how to find people, how to make connections from their Twitter networks. And even as you're talking here, I just made myself a note, like I really need to put together a starter pack of podcast guests so people can find people really easily. Like
I've been struggling with like, well, I like know a lot of people more than 150. Who do I not put on the list? And then I'm like, I can't decide. So I'm just going to engage with everybody. And then but doing one for something really specific like that, right?
I need a category, I guess, and because I know I've been added to some lists where it's like ASCD authors. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, like that's great that they added me to that, right? Like that's a category, not just like favorites almost, right? And I think there's, different ways to address it. But now that we're talking about it, that's definitely an idea I'm going to run with and try out.
To do it.
And so I know, and I'll make sure that that's ready for people when they're listening to this episode too.
All right. So all you're going to do is you're going to search up Monica Burns on Bluesky, and just on her profile page, there's a tab that says starter packs. Right. You're going to click on it and you're going to see her recommendations for people that she knows talks education. It's going to be amazing. You're going to right away get connected.
I love that. No, thank you for that idea too. That feels super actionable for me coming off today's episode. And, one thing you alluded to, and I want to make sure we get to before we finish up, is this idea of content moderation and spam. So you shared a strategy of like looking at someone's profile, making sure there was a picture, seeing that they were an educator. What have you found, about the ways that Bluesky is handling some of these issues? Anything that feels really different from Twitter or really different from other platforms?
What's super different is you have so much control over everything. So the first thing you should do after making your bio, after putting your picture on there, after going to Monica's profile and following her starter pack, so you have a few people on there, is click on settings and read through them all. There's like a ton of settings that you can control how people are interacting with your account. It's not an echo chamber. That's what it was. That's what I wanted you to ask me about.
Oh, yeah.
Is this an echo chamber? It's not an echo chamber to listen to people who are in your network. To say, I don't want to hear people who are angry against education shouting at me that teachers are putting litter boxes in their classroom. Like that's not an echo chamber. It's like going to a conference session. You're with people talking about a certain topic who are interested in the topic and not who are interested in tearing you down.
Right. Exactly. No, and that's such a good thing. I love that just echo chamber reminder for people, because if they've had a poor experience on another platform because they felt that before, I really do think that this is a space that has a lot of potential to grow. We'll probably have people like you and me that were on Twitter for the past decade and seeing the value in it, but also for people who like maybe tried Twitter and didn't have a great experience or tried something in the past 2 years and are like, I don't get it. Like what this mentor or teacher told me, like, this doesn't seem like anything's happening here. Well, maybe there's just been this like lull and here we are, back together. Bluesky. So, Alice, I, of course, am going to link out to all the things so people can find you on Bluesky and
tinyurl.com/edusky is the #1 link.
Oh, perfect. And I'll put that one on there too. So for anyone who's like listening on the go right now, just making like a mental bookmark, where can people connect with you? Where can they learn more about all of the great work you're doing?
Well, all of my socials are at Alice Keeler, and on Bluesky, I'm at alicekeeler.com. But please seek out just community members. If you go to tinyurl.com/edusky, it is a list of people who have asked to be on this list, and it randomizes like 100 times a day. So every time you see this list, it's going to suggest to you a different educator that you can interact with. Click on their profile. Now you're in Bluesky. And you can see it so long as they have their accounts visible, because of course you can make it not.
Right.
And then scroll through, see what they're posting. Now sign up, add a photo, add a bio. And then, if you come around and stumble across me on there, great, follow me. I'm trying to follow everybody back, but really help build the community.
Thank you so much, Alice, for your time today, your actionable tips for educators. And I hope to see lots of listeners on Bluesky before the end of the year.
Me too. Thank you, Monica.
This was such a fun conversation with Alice, and whether you've tried out Bluesky already or you've thought about it or it's totally new to you, I hope that it's something you consider maybe for right now or maybe in the new year if you're listening to this in December 2024. So I'm really excited about the potential of this platform. Twitter changed my life, I think, would be the only way to put it. As much as that sounds like a cliche, I would not have been able to build everything behind ClassTechTips.com. I don't think I would ever have started this Easy EdTech podcast if it wasn't for some of those early connections, the feedback I got on the content I was creating, on all the educators that I met on Twitter who really gave me just some momentum for building this thing that you are now listening to or interacting with, at least in an audio way. So I'm excited about Bluesky, even for the nostalgia of it all. And I sure hope that if this has piqued your curiosity, that you take a peek at it too. So let's make this EdTech easy with a few key points from today's episode. Bluesky fosters collaboration for educators. Add a bio and photo to share that you are an educator. Use hashtags like EduSky to find content. Starter packs and hashtags help you find people to follow. Remember, you can find the show notes and full list of resources from this episode, including all of the ways to connect with Alice Keeler, by heading to classtechtips.com/podcast and finding today's episode. We're just shy of 300. This one is episode 297. This episode is sponsored by the free stuff page on my website, classtechtips.com. This is where you'll find free weekly planner pages, graphic organizers, ebooks, and more. Just head to classtechtips.com and press the free stuff button at the top of the page to find lots of free downloads for you and your colleagues. That's classtechtips.com and press the free stuff button at the top of the page. Thank you for listening to this new episode of the Easy EdTech podcast. I love creating new episodes for you each week, but I could use a bit of help spreading the word about the podcast. Can you leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast app? Spotify will let you tap on the stars, and Apple Podcasts will let you tap on the stars and leave a 1 or 2 sentence review. Thank you so much for taking this extra step. It helps other educators find episodes like this one when they're searching for EdTech tips.